Hey everyone, thank you for continuing to join us here on PALS TV. Now for our lunchtime segment, we're going to be heading over to Columbus and joining Phil. Each Tuesday we've been having our book clubs here, and they've been fantastic, and we really appreciate Phil walking us through Don Quixote and helping us understand what certain things mean, because it was wrote in a different time, right? So he's done a fantastic job just helping us truly understand the meaning inside of some of the words there. So looking forward to what we have in store here for chapter 6 and beyond with the saga of Don Quixote. So live from Columbus, we have Phil.
Welcome aboard, gang. As Aaron said, we're going to get into chapter 6 and well, we're already into it. We're going to finish up chapter 6. We'll probably get into chapter 7. And in a bit, we will probably have some guest readers. I will still be stopping every single sentence and explaining the sentences so we all know what's going on. But let's move over so we can pull up our story. There we go. Story so far, Don Quixote has left his house, wants to become a knight. He went to an inn. The innkeeper made him a knight. He fought some people during that. Then he decided to head back home to get some money and some clean shirts. Got into a couple of tussles on his way back and got beat up pretty bad in the last one, so that he came back in. Where is that? Somebody looks like they've got a question. Did that click there? Or am I slow? Did you have a question? Raising your hand? Nope, okay. All right. So he got beat up pretty bad, but he got back home because somebody helped him there. And since he's been back home, his friends, neighbors, and the people that work for him have all decided that he is clearly sick, and it's the books that he reads that are the thing that made him sick. So he is going to, or he's not going to, all his friends are burning all the books. So they've been going through one at a time. That's where we left them. They're in the library one at a time, throwing books out to burn them. The biggest people we're talking to right now are the curate, who is the local priest, the local barber, who is a friend of Don Quixote's, and Don Quixote's housekeeper. And all were there. So the curate has just finished talking about what books he's going to continue burning, and they're going to continue on. To all this, the barber gave his assent and looked upon it as right and proper, being persuaded that the curate was so staunch to the faith and loyal to the truth that he would not for the world say anything opposed to them. So the barber says, all right, priest, whatever you want to do, that's fine. The barber is of the idea that because the priest is a priest, he can't do anything wrong. So there won't be any argument. Whatever the priest decides, the barber's with it. Opening another book, he saw it was Palmerin de Oliva, and beside it was another called Palmerin of England, seeing which the licentiate said, let the olive be made firewood of at once, and burned until no ashes even are left. And let that palm of England be kept and preserved as a thing that stands alone, and let such another case be made for it as that which Alexander found among the spoils of Darius, and set aside for the safekeeping of the works of the poet Homer. Mostly this is just so the priest can make a joke about the words palm and olive, which are the roots of the words here. He decides the one book they're going to burn, but they're going to keep the one. This book, Gossip, is of authority for two reasons. First, because it is very good, and secondly, because it is said to have been written by a wise and witty king of Portugal. There's this book, Palmerin of England. We're going to keep this one. It's written well, and there was this really good guy who wrote it. So we're definitely keeping that one. All the adventures of the at the castle of Miraguarda are excellent and of admirable contrivance, and the language is polished and clear, studying and observing the style befitting the speaker with propriety and judgment. Again, all he's saying is this book is written really well. So then, provided it seems good to you, Master Nicholas, I say let this and Amadis of Gaul be remitted the penalty of fire. And as for all the rest, let them perish without further question or query. This is this book, because it's well written, and Amadis of Gaul, which we've already said we're not going to burn. These two we're going to keep. Everything else we're throwing in the fire. We're not even going to go through it. One more. There we go. Nay, gossip, said the barber, for this that I have here is the famous Don Balanus. I said, well, aren't we going to keep this one? Because this one's famous. Well, said the curate, that and the second, third, and fourth parts all stand in need of a little rhubarb to purge their excess of bile. And they must be cleared of all that stuff about the Castle of Fame and other greater affectations, to which end let them be allowed the overseas term. And according as they mend, so shall mercy or justice be meted out to them. And in the meantime, gossip, do you keep them in your house and let no one read them? I said, well, that one's okay, but parts of it aren't good. They need to be cleaned out. So instead of burning these, you hide them in your house and don't let anybody near them. This bit about rhubarb purging the excess of bile. Rhubarb leaves will make you need to go to the bathroom, and that's why you're not supposed to eat them. So the rhubarb stalks, perfectly fine and delicious. And at this time, that was a medicine to relieve constipation, as you would take rhubarb. That's what he's talking about there. We need to cleanse these things and get all the bad stuff out of them. With all my heart, said the barber, and not caring to tire himself with reading more books of chivalry, he told the housekeeper to take all the big ones and throw them into the yard. Too much work going through all these one by one. Get all those big books, put them on the fire. It was not said to one dull or deaf, but to one who enjoyed burning them more than weaving the broadest and finest web that could be. And seizing about 8 at a time, she flung them out of the window. The housekeeper is perfectly happy to be burning these books. She is thrilled about it. She's grabbing huge loads of them, throwing them all at once onto this fire. Well, not a fire yet. The starting of the fire. In carrying so many together, she let one fall at the feet of the barber, who took it up, curious to know whose it was, and found it said, History of the Famous Knight, Tirante el Blanco. So she's grabbing these big loads, one of them falls out, and the barber says, oh, which one is this? Picks it up and figures out it's Tirante el Blanco. God bless me, said the curate with a shout. Tirante el Blanco here? Hand it over, gossip, for in it I reckon I have found a treasury of enjoyment and a mind of recreation. So the priest is saying, oh, hang on. That one we were about to throw out, that's a really good book. Here is Don Kyrie eleison of Montauban, a valiant knight, and his brother Thomas of Montauban, and the knight Fonseca, with the battle the bold Tirante fought with the mastiff, and the witticisms of the damsel Placer de mi vida, and the loves and wiles of the widow Reposada, and the empress in love with the squire Hippolito. In truth, gossip, by right of its style, it is the best book in the world. Oh, we were going to burn this one, but it's got all these great stories that I really enjoy, and it's written so well. It's like the best book there is. This is great. Here, knights eat and sleep and die in their beds and make their wills before dying, and a great deal more, of which there is nothing in all the other books. So in this story, it's more true to life. People do normal things. They have to eat their meals. They have to sleep. They don't always die on the battlefield or never die at all. And they take care of their legal obligations. They make sure everybody's okay. Nevertheless, I say he who wrote it, for deliberately composing such fooleries, deserves to be sent to the galleys for life. So, although this is a really good book, it's still got a bunch of nonsense in it. And we do not like the author because he wrote this kind of nonsense. Take it home with you and read it, and you will see what I have said is true. Don't burn this one, barber, says the priest. You take this one home, and instead of hiding it, you read this one, and you'll know. As you will, said the barber. But what are we to do with these little books that are left? And the barber, who, as we know, thinks the priest is going to be writing everything, says, well, of course I'll do that. We've got a bunch more, so what are we doing with all of these? These must be not chivalry, but poetry, said the curate. And opening one, he saw it was the Diana of Jorge de Montemayor, and supposing all the others to be of the same sort, these, he said, do not deserve to be burned like the others, for they neither do nor can do the mischief the books of chivalry have done, being books of entertainment that can hurt no one. Oh, all these little ones, that's poetry, and poetry is fine. There aren't any knights or crazy stories in that. So we're going to keep these. They are all okay. Oh, that slipped too far. There we go, get the highlighting right. Ah, senor, said the niece, your worship had better order these to be burned as well as the others. For it would be no wonder if, after being cured of his chivalry disorder, my uncle, by reading these, took a fancy to turn shepherd and range the woods and fields, singing and piping, or what would be still worse, to turn poet, which they say is an incurable and infectious malady. So the niece says, let's go ahead and burn all the rest of these books as well, because they might not be about knights, but you can't trust my uncle, Don Quixote. He'll probably think that he should do all the stuff that's in these poems as well. And they talk about shepherd and piping in the fields and stuff, because at that time, the biggest movement in poetry was called the pastoral movement. And it was all about shepherds and lonely shepherdesses finding love as they sit and watch the fields and their flocks. And now we've got our guest reader.
Oh.
Jump on, Ms. Otter. We're starting right here.
The damsel is right, said the curate, and it will be well to put the stumbling block and temptation out of our friend's way. To begin then with the Diana of Montemayor, I am of opinion it should not be burned, but that it should be cleared out of all that about the sage, Felicia and the magic water, and of almost all the longer pieces of verse, let it keep and welcome its prose and the honor of being the first books of the kind.
So the curate says, you know what? Don Quixote's niece is right. He will probably get all into this poetry stuff, lose his mind over that. But this one has a lot of good stuff in it, except these things I don't like. So instead of burning it, we're just going to cut all the stuff I don't like out of it, which is most of what the book's about, as it happens. This that comes next, said the barber, is the Diana entitled The Second Part by the Salamancan. And this other has the same title, and its author is Gil Polo. Oh, we got two more that are about the same stuff. One's a sequel, but by somebody else. And the other is just about the same stuff. So are we going to keep these?
As for that of the
Salamancan.
Replied the curate, let it go to swell the number of the condemned in the yard, and let Gil Polos be preserved as if it came from Apollo himself. But get on, gossip, and make haste, for it is growing late.
So I said, well, this first one, we're throwing it in the fire. Getting rid of that. But this one is the second one by Gil Polo is so good that the god of poetry and writing himself must have written it. So we're going to keep this one. This book, said the barber, opening another, is the 10 books of the fortune of love, written by Antonio de Lofraso, a Sardinian poet. Well, this is this next one.
By the orders I have received, said the curate, since Apollo has been Apollo, and the muses have been muses, and poets have been poets, so draw absurd a book as this has never been written. And in its way, it is best and the most singular of all the species that have as yet appeared, and who has not read it may be sure he has never read what is delightful.
So, says, well, this is probably the best, funniest book ever written. It is hilarious, and for all of time, nothing this funny has ever been made. Give it here, gossip, for I make more account of having found it than if they had given me a cassock of Florence stuff. So a cassock is just what a priest wears, and the Florence stuff is from Florence. The material there was very fine silk, quite fancy. I said, we're not burning this one. You give me this book. This is better than if I had a really nice suit.
He put it aside with extreme satisfaction, and the barber went on. These that come next are the shepherd of Iberia, nymphs of Henares, and the enlightenment of jealousy.
So the priest takes the book, puts it aside so he can keep that one. And the barber says, oh, we got 3 more here. This is who they are, what they are. Then all we have to do, said the curate, is to hand them over to the secular arm of the housekeeper and ask me not why, or we shall never have done. Okay, we're going to give these to the housekeeper. She's pitching them, but I don't want to talk about it. It's going to take too long.
The next is the pastor de Filida?
Filida. You want to go ahead with the next one?
No pastor, that said the curate, but a highly polished quarter, let it be preserved as a precious jewel.
I said, what? Again, pastor here is not a preacher. It's part of that pastoral poetry. It is just about fields and sheep and shepherds and things like that. No, it's not about a priest, says the priest. He says, it's a courtier, a person who's in a court, somebody famous, a noble person. We're keeping this one. It's really nice. This large one here, said the barber, is called the Treasury of Various Poems. Here's the next one. If there were not so many of them, said the curate, they would be the more relished. This book must be weeded and cleansed of certain vulgarities, which it has with its excellences. Let it be preserved because the author is a friend of mine, and out of respect for other more heroic and loftier works that he has written. This one has some bad stuff in it. We're just going to cut it out. But we're not going to burn it because I like some stuff in it, and I know the guy who wrote it, and I'd feel bad if I burned his book.
Yeah, you know, the guy who wrote this.
No, that is not. I'm explaining the sentence we read. Are you going to come here and read?
This, continued the barber, is the Cancionero of Lopez de Maldonado. The author of that book, too, said the curate, is a great friend of mine, and his verses from his own mouth are the admiration of all who hear them, for such is the sweetness of his voice that he enchants when he chants them. It gives rather too much of the eclogues, but what is good was never yet plentiful. Let it be kept with those that have been set apart. But what book is that next?
So the curate says, well, this book is also written by a friend of mine, so we're definitely going to keep that one because whether it's a good book or not, the poet speaks very well and reads very well. So we're definitely keeping that, mostly because it's a friend. You want this next one?
Yeah.
You're going to do this one and then the first verse or first line.
Wait, what is that word?
Galatea,
Okay. The Galatea of Miguel de
Cervantes.
Okay. The Galatea of Miguel de Cervantes, said the barber. That Cervantes has been for many years a great friend of mine, and to my knowledge, he has been more experienced in reverses than in verses.
So you'll remember
stop
that
it like that.
the author of Don Quixote is Miguel de Cervantes. So he has put one of his own books inside this book. And the priest says, well, Cervantes, he's a really good person, but he doesn't write a lot of poetry. His life tends to go bad more often than not. Maybe not the best. It's important when we say reverses that he's talking about when things bad happened to Cervantes. And Cervantes wrote Don Quixote while he was in prison. So something bad had just happened to him. He's not much of a poet. His book has some good invention in it. It presents us with something, but brings nothing to a conclusion. We must wait for the second part of promises. Perhaps with amendment, it may succeed in winning the full measure of grace that is now denied it. And in the meantime, do you, Senor Gossip, keep it shut up in your own quarters. Maybe this book will get better when we read the rest of it. But now, it's just not that good. It's not so bad that we're gonna burn it, but this is one of the ones you're gonna take and hide with those others.
Very good, said the barber. And here come three together. The Araucana of Don Alonso de Erelica, the Austriada of Juan Rufo, Justice of Cordova, and the Monstrate of the Cristobal de Faris, the Valencian poet.
Hey, I got 3 more books of poetry here, says the barber.
These 3 books, said the curate, are the best that have been written in Castilian in heroic verse, and they may compare with the most famous of Italy. Let them be preserved at the richest treasure of poetry that Spain possesses.
The priest says, well, you know, we in Spain here are not known for our great poetry like the Italians are, but these are the best we've got. So we're definitely keeping these.
The curate was tired and would not look into any more books, and he so decided that, contents uncertified, all the rest should be burned. But then the barber held open one called The Tears of Angelica.
The priest says, I am just sick and tired of going through these one by one. Burn them all. And the barber says, oh, what about this one? As he has done several times. I should have shed tears myself, said the curate when he heard the title, had I ordered that book to be burned. For its author was one of the famous poets of the world, not to say of Spain, and was very happy in the translation of some of Ovid's fables. Oh, I can't believe we almost burned that one. That one's really good. The author is a genius.
Master. Yes.
So here we go on into chapter 7.
At this instant, Don Quixote began shouting, Hear, hear, valiant knights! Here's need for you to put forth the might of your strong arms, for they are the court, are gaining the mastery of the tyranny. Tourney, called away. Oh, no, you don't even stop by that.
So as they're doing this, Don Quixote wakes up from being beaten, laying on the ground, and starts shouting a bunch of stuff about knights. He says, oh, the knights of the court are winning the big contest, the tourney. A tourney is, well, you know, a joust, when 2 knights run at each other with lances and try and knock each other off. A tourney is a whole bunch of knights running each other and just beating each other up until one person is left.
Called away by the noise and outcry, they proceeded no farther with the scrutiny of the remaining books, and so it is thought that Correlia, the Lion of Spain, and the Deeds of Emperor, written by Don Luis de Avila, went to the fire unseen and unheard, for no doubt they were among those that remained, and perhaps if the curate had seen them, they would not have undergone so severe a sentence.
So the priest and the barber and the housekeeper. Oh, there's a whole bunch of noise. Okay, just burn everything. It'll be fine. Burn everything. And there were some really good famous books in there, and they probably got burned. But we don't really know which ones are in there because the story doesn't tell us. Because they're busy trying to figure out why Don Quixote's yelling. When they reached Don Quixote, he was already out of bed and was still shouting and raving and slashing and cutting all around, as wide awake as if he had never slept. They get into his room and he is losing his mind and beating invisible people and shouting and screaming, tearing up all of his furniture.
They closed with him and by force got him back to bed. And when he became a little calm, addressing the curate, he said to him, "Of a truth, Signor Archbishop Turnip, it is great disgrace for us who call ourselves 12 peers, so carelessly to allow the knights of the court to gain the victory of the tourney. We, the adventurers, carried off the honor of the 3 former days."
So Don Quixote sees the priest and thinks he's an archbishop in one of these stories. And he says, "Oh, this is not good. The people I'm not with are going to win this big contest. And we've been winning for the 3 days before."
Hush, gossip, said the curate. Please God, the luck may turn, and what is lost today may be won tomorrow. For the present, let your worship have care of your health, for it seems to me that you are over fatigued, if not badly wounded.
So the priest says, "Don Quixote, just relax. You can win this tomorrow, but you're really tired and you might be hurt. So just lay down and calm down."
"Wounded, no," said Don Quixote, "but bruised and battered, no doubt. For the bastard Don Roland and the cudgelled me with the trunk of an oak tree, and all for envy, because he sees that I alone rival him in the archivements. But I should not call..."
And Don Quixote says, no, I'm not hurt. I'm just kind of beat up and bruised because this other knight knows that I'm better than him, and he took a great big oak tree and just beat me with it for a while. Sneaky, not fair, not very knightly.
"But I should not call myself Rinaldo's of Montavon, did he not pay me for it in spite of all his enchantments, as soon as I rise from this bed. For the present, let them bring me something to eat, for that I feel is what will be more to my purpose, and leave it to me to avenge myself."
And even though this guy snuck up on me, beat me up, I'm not going to go after him right now. And I'm not saying anybody else should go after him. Just bring me something to eat and I'll relax a bit because I do feel pretty sore. And as soon as I feel better, I'm going to find this guy. I'm going to beat him up.
Sounds like me.
Well, we should never hurt others.
They did as he wished. They gave him something to eat, and once more he fell asleep, leaving them marveling at his madness.
He says, oh, at least he is going to relax now. Let's just get him some food and he'll go to sleep. So they bring him some food, he falls asleep, and they're like, this guy has lost his mind. That night, the housekeeper burned to ashes all the books that were in the yard and in the whole house, and some must have been consumed that deserve preservation in an everlasting archive. But their fate and the laziness of the examiner did not permit it. And so in them was verified the proverb that the innocent suffer for the guilty.
Mm.
So soon, as Don Quixote's back to sleep, housekeeper says, time to burn some books. He sets the rest of them on fire and then just goes through it. She doesn't care if the priest and the barber said we ought to keep these. He throws them all on the fire. Book burning, book burning. That's what makes the housekeeper happy.
Book burning Betty.
Terrible.
We called her.
Her name was not Beatrice.
One of the remedies which the curate and the barber immediately applied to their friend's disorder was to wall up and plaster the room where the books were, so that when he got up, he should not find them. Possibly the cause, being removed from effect, might cease, and they might say that magician had carried them off, room and all, and this was done with all dispatch.
So the barber and the priest said, I know what we're going to do. Now we burned all the books. Let's just close up the room so he can't get in the library and see that they're gone. And since he thinks magicians are real, we'll tell him a wizard did it. And that is usually the answer to everything. A wizard did it.
2 days later, Don Quixote got up, and the first thing he did was to go and look at his books, and not finding the room where he had left, and he wandered from the side to side looking for it. He came.
So Don Quixote spends a couple days relaxing and feeling better. And then once he's feeling better, he gets up. He says, oh, I need to go read these books that I love so much. He's wondering, where is my library? It was right here and there's just a wall. He's very confused and starts looking around trying to find his library.
Roosevelt, can I do the voices?
Yeah,
I'm
sure.
much better at the voices.
I'm not sure which voices you're talking about, but yeah,
They're in
whatever.
quotations.
Oh. So you want to take this?
He came to the place where the life door used to be and tried it with his hands and turned and twisted his eyes in every direction without saying a word. But after a good while, he asked his housekeeper whereabouts was the room that held his books.
So he gets to the wall that is now there instead of a door to his library. I know it was here. He starts smacking on the wall and he's looking around and he can't see his library. And finally says, hey, housekeeper, where did the library go?
The housekeeper, who had been already well instructed in what she was to answer, said,
What room or what nothing is it that your worship is looking for? There are neither room nor books in this house now, for the devil himself has carried all away.
The housekeeper says, what do you mean a library? Oh, we don't have a library anymore. Devil stole it. Which is a little more excessive than, a wizard did it. But that's what she's going with.
It was not the devil,
said the niece,
but the magician who came on a cloud one night after the day of the worship left his, in the dismounting from a serpent that he rode. He entered the room, and what he did there, I know not, but after a little while he made off, flying through the roof, and he left the house full of smoke. And when we went to see what he had done, we saw neither book nor room, but we remember very well, the housekeeper and I, that on leaving, the old villain said in a loud voice that, for a private grudge, he owed the owner of books and the room. He had done mischief in that house that would be discovered by and by. He said, too, that his name was the sage Montan.
So, all that she's worried about Don Quixote believing too much in these things, the niece steps in and says, hey, Uncle Don Quixote, as probably be Don Uncle Quixote, Don being a title, as we've discussed before. Look, it wasn't the devil, a wizard did it. And he says he doesn't like you specifically, and that's why he did it.
He must have said Friston.
Said Don Quixote.
I don't know whether he called himself Friston or Friton.
Said the housekeeper.
Oh, shit. Oh, I'm sorry. I keep only knowing what his name ended with, ton.
Oh, no, I think it's this guy, says Don Quixote. The housekeeper says, I don't really know, but it sounded something like this.
So it does.
Said Don Quixote.
And he is a sage magician, a great enemy of mine, who has a spite against me because he knows by his arts and more lore that in process of time I am to engage in single combat with a knight whom he befriends and that I am to conquer. he will be unable to prevent it. And for this reason, he endeavors to do me all the ill that he can. But I promise him it will be hard for him to oppose or avoid what he decreed by heaven.
Don Quixote says, oh yeah, it's definitely this wizard I think it is. He doesn't like me because I'm going to beat up a friend of his. And he's trying to stop it, but you can't stop it. Nothing can stop Don Quixote.
Who doubts that?
said the niece.
But uncle, who mixes you up with these quarrels? Would it be better to remain at peace in your own house instead of roaming the world, looking for better bread than ever came of wheat, never reflecting that many go for war and come back shorn?
His niece says, what are you talking about? Why are you in a fight with this guy? You don't even know this guy. Why don't you just relax at home? There's lots of nice stuff here. You don't have to go out and come back beat up like you are now.
O niece of mine,
Replied Don Quixote.
how much astray art thou in thy reckoning? Ere they shear me with, I shall have plucked away and stripped of the beards or off of the beards of all who dare touch only the tip of the hair.
Don Quixote says, well, I'm not going to go out and get beat up like I did again. Somebody tries it, I'm going to smack them down first.
The two were unwilling to make any further answers, as they saw that his anger was kindling.
So the housekeeper and the niece say, well, we're just going to step out of this one because he's getting really upset now. We don't need that. In short, then, he remained at home 15 days very quietly, without showing any signs of a desire to take up with his former delusions. And during this time, he held lively discussions with his two gossips, the curate and the barber, on the point he maintained that knights errant were what the world stood most in need of, and that in him was to be accomplished the revival of knight errantry. Don Quixote isn't talking about going out right now. He's just going to relax, stay at home, and spends a couple weeks. But the whole time he's there, he says, you know what? This country really needs some knights, and the knight it needs, it's me.
The curate sometimes contradicted him, sometimes agreed with him, for he had not observed this precaution, he would have been unable to bring him to reason.
So the priest isn't sure what to do, but he says, well, I guess I'll agree with him sometimes. I'll argue with him, because if I just argue with him or just agree with him, then he's not going to understand what's going on, and we won't fix what's making him sick. Meanwhile, Don Quixote worked upon a farm laborer, a neighbor of his, an honest man, and if indeed that title can be given to him who is poor, but with very little wit in his pate. So Don Quixote is going to talk to this neighbor, who's a poor guy, works on a farm, and Cervantes again is showing, in this case, his classism instead of his racism, and said, look, the guy's honest, but he's poor, so you can't trust him to be that honest. Don't trust the poor people. Cervantes is not the greatest person. But he's as honest as can be, but this guy's not very bright.
In a word, he so talked him over, and with such precautions and promises, that the poor clown made up his mind to sally forth with him and serve him as a square.
So this esquire.
As a school.
So this farmer, who's not the brightest, but a good person, he decides, oh, I'm gonna be Don Quixote's squire. He's convinced. We remember that's the servant of a knight. He said sometimes somebody that wants to be a knight beforehand, but in this case and in many others, just a guy who's going to carry stuff around, help him out, just like a caddy in golf. The number 7 lands, please. Don Quixote, among other things, told him that he ought to be ready to go with him gladly, because any moment an adventure might occur that might win an island in the twinkling of an eye and leave him governor of it. Though you never know when these things are going to come up, says Don Quixote. Get ready to go, something will happen, and you'll end up rich and famous. It'll be wonderful.
On these and the like promises, Sancho Panza, for the laborer was called, left wife and children and engaged himself as esquire to his need.
So Sancho Panza, his name's going to come up a lot. Sancho says, "This is great. I want to be the governor of an island. This sounds good. So I'm going to leave my family. I'm your squire. This will be wonderful." Don Quixote next set about getting some money and selling one thing and pawning another, and making a bad bargain in every case. He got together a fair sum. Like you remember, the innkeeper said, "You need money and shirts if you're going to go adventuring." And so Don Quixote was going to start selling his stuff, going to the pawn shop, getting some money for that. He's not getting what it's worth, but he's got a lot of stuff. He's a fairly rich guy. So he gets a pretty good amount of money.
He provided himself with a buckler, which he begged as a loan from a friend, and restoring his battered helmet as best he could, he warned his squire Sancho of the day and the hour he meant to set out, that he might provide himself with what he thought most needed.
All right, so Don Quixote gets a new shield because his was torn up, and he repairs that beat up helmet with the cardboard and the ribbons all over it, and says, "Hey, Sancho, get ready to go. This is when we're leaving. So you need to get all the stuff you think you need. We're going to take off at this time."
There's no more words for me to
Above all, he charged him to take the alforjas with him. The other said he would, and that he meant to take also a very good ass he had, as he was not much given to going on foot.
And don't forget, Sancho says, "I ain't walking. I'm going to bring my donkey, my ass. I'm riding on that thing. I don't get a great big horse like Don Quixote." About the ass, Don Quixote hesitated a little, trying whether he could call to mind any knight errant taking with him an esquire mounted on assback. But no instance occurred to his memory. "I don't know if anybody's ever ridden an ass as a squire. I can't think of any time." For all that, however, he determined to take him, intending to furnish him with a more honorable mount when a chance of it presented itself, by appropriating the horse of the first discourteous knight he encountered. "It'll be fine. I'll go beat up a knight and we'll take his horse, and then my squire will also have a nice horse." The squire, because so many of them were trained to become knights, also usually were mounted on not quite so good a horse as the knight, but a very good horse that could be used in combat.
Himself he provided with shirts and such other things as he could, according to the advice the host had given him, all which being done without taking leave, Sancho Panza of his wife and children, or Don Quixote of his housekeeper and niece, they sallied forth unseen by anybody from the village one night, and made such good way in the course of that by daylight they held themselves safe from discovery, even should search be made for him.
So Don Quixote's got his money. Now he's collecting his shirts, and he's got laundry. He's got cash. It's everything the innkeeper said he should be carrying as a knight. "All right, we've got all this. Let's take off." And they steal out in the middle of the night, and they start riding all through the night until they're well away from everybody. So even if anybody's looking for them, they are too far. We're going to go ahead and stop there, and we'll pick this up next time. There's my stop share. There we go. And we are back to this. Anybody have any questions or anything that we want to talk about with Don Quixote in particular, or, anything at all?
I have something to say. Oh, Gila's more important.
Come on, button.
Gila, is there something that's popping up that says unmute? Because sometimes that's
Nah,
We couldn't unmute her last
We couldn't
time.
unmute her last time either.
wrong one. All right, Galen, I can't get you on mute the way we've got to set it up. All right.
Okay, I have a confession to make, Phil.
Yes.
I wanted to apologize to all on the Spain network that we're in that I made fun of you for Don Quixote, and I'm very sorry. I had a wonderful time reading. I have submerged myself. I am now Don Quixote and his niece. And I feel very honored and privileged to be your friend.
It's a great story.
It's a great story, you guys. Come back weekly.
And, you know, feel free to watch the movie, Man of La Mancha. That's great too.
Well done. This was a nice twist to your Don Quixote tale there, Phil. I liked Audrey and Bianca stepping in and reading some of it, then you explaining it. So very well done, all of you. So everyone come back and join us here in 15 minutes as we don't go too far and stay at AOTL with our friends there and do some artwork to start our afternoon. So come back and see you then.
Bye. Ciao, ciao.